Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and wherever you are in this wide, wonderful, beautiful world that we live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. Every week, I speak to some phenomenal people from around the globe in the area of sales. And I say sales, it's all loose around the area of sales because we talk about psychology, we talk about behavior economics, we talk about the mind, the brain, the neuroscience behind how we do what we do. We also talk about technology, we also talk about social media, lots and lots and lots of stuff that we talk about, but it is at the core how we can perform sales at its element and in leadership. And I call myself the sales relationship coach because I believe that everything is at its core connection between one person and another. And my guest today is Joshua B. Lee, and he knows about human connection from what I've read about his profile. And what I love, and we just discussed this beforehand, I love the dopamine dealer. I saw that last year and I said, I'm going to have to connect with you. Joshua, you're very welcome.
Jason, man, I appreciate it. I'm excited to have the conversation today and all the things you're talking about. Because I mean, people go in, they're like, oh, sales. Well, it's all about leads and being able to, how many leads can you get and how many sales can you get? And they forget about the human element on the other side. They forget that there's another human being. And then if that relationship, again, you being that sales relationship coach is so key. So when you reached out and you're like, Josh, can we do a podcast? I was like, dude, the sales relationship, he gets me. We're going to have a fun conversation. So let's do it, man.
I like read your profile and about how you created where you are and your journey and your business books that you've written. And I'm reading your profile now,
Yeah.
and you wrote a book, Balance is Bullshit, Create a Beautiful Marriage and Blended Family. And you have two wonderful kids as well. And you bring everything in, but you sort of changed the way you thought, and you started and found of the your business where it is now, Standout Authority. Can you tell me about what anchored you into just change from what you did to where you are and a continued journey? I know you got a lot of family support in there, and your wife's also involved. Are your
She
kids
is.
involved as well?
Yeah, Jason, I mean, it's a great question because I mean, I think a lot of us are taught a certain way, right? Especially guys like you and I that have been in this world for a long time. And, we're taught to be able to, business about, really being able to make as much money as possible, to be able to hold on to it, right? Don't let anyone see your weaknesses. And, and as men, as entrepreneurs, right, we've got to be this pillar that don't let anyone see that there's anything wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I built that. I went that way, right? My first companies I started back in 02, 03. One of my first big clients was a company that most people forgot about, MySpace, right?
Oh,
Way
I
back
remember.
when.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I actually helped them develop one of the first social media ads to be able to monetize their traffic that most social media is based off of today. And I mean, it was amazing. It was great to be able to go in there and look, we monetize money. I knew how to monetize online from going through and monetizing every acronym, CPC, CPA, CPM, CPL. I did it all,
yeah,
but it was just monetizing.
yeah.
And, for a long time, it took me a while, right? After honestly controlling over 35 trillion online impressions on my own
Wow.
servers, almost monetizing roughly around $1 billion in online advertising, I noticed something different. There was a huge difference between actually traffic and actually true engagement. And most people didn't know the difference. They were just wanting traffic for traffic's sake. Like, oh, I need more traffic. Just like these days, right? With social media, I just want likes, I want followers.
Yeah,
But if those people actually don't convert, what's the benefit of it that other than visual, right? And people are understanding at a certain point as human beings, we go, okay, that doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't add up. And for me, I started seeing that, being able to go through building multiple different companies in those spaces. And not only in the business side, but in the personal side, it really started weighing on me, right? I started being able to go through where everything was that work life balance, really being able to go through and be able to build a business, but also, have that fun and have two separate lives.
mm,
But what that created for me, Jason, was I became 40 pounds overweight. I had my relationships became monetary. And I had no vision about where I was going. I just knew where I was at. And everything was right. And honestly, I became very depressed. And to a certain point, outside looking in, no one saw it. Right. Like I had the perfect life, family, house, businesses, all these things. And I mean, I remember the day, Jason, that I went into my office. And I mean, I remember shutting the doors, and that office became not only a sanctuary for me to escape the world, but also a coffin that I was contemplating, staring at the wall, if I should be on this planet or not. And
Yeah.
if the money that I create is more important than me. And that was a huge aha moment for me. You know?
I was studying this actually, and I spoke to several people. If you're to lead, you really have to understand you first. If you're
Right.
to engage with other people and lead properly, if I can say it correctly, yeah, excuse me, you really have to understand what goes on inside you and what really are your triggers, what are your motivations,
Yeah.
what makes you tick. Are you alive inside, or like you just said, you can come to a point in your life, and I've been there as well, that you just feel like you're just a vessel or shell inside, and you don't see a high purpose.
Right.
um, and I always like to say, a lovely Zig Ziglar quote, one of my favorites: connect
Love
your
Zig.
passion to your purpose, to your dream. And that has always stayed with me, to find my true self and really understand your true self. And then you can actually connect with other people in sales, business,
Yeah.
whatever you do. And I'm really glad that you said that, because that's really quite an emotional journey that you've said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the important part. And like you said too, I mean, I didn't get to a point till I got to a breaking point. It sucks that some of us get to that point because not a lot of people in this world are sharing. They are more now than they were then about the stresses and the things and the mindsets that you need to be able to have success. Not what other people define it, right? People define the success mostly as monetary. They
Yeah.
don't see that success within yourself self first. And for me, I had to reset my life. I honestly, I went through a divorce.
Mm.
My lawyers told me that it was going to take about 3 years because I had 10 companies at the time. I said, I value time over money, especially for my kids. So I closed down everything. And at 36, I moved back in, went through a divorce, moved back in with my parents with a little bit under $1,000 in my name and reset my life. And I tried to figure out what I wanted to be able to do. One of the first things I did, like you mentioned, I wrote my book, Balance is Bullshit, really for myself to be able to share some of the things that I went through. But then I also realized too, I had that opportunity, right? I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna be a life coach. And I mean, Jason, let me tell you, man, I
I've
had
been
the
there.
man bun, the mala beads. I mean, the pendulum had swung, right? I went from money to life. But that's the big thing too, is that pendulum swings. And when it settled, I realized it was a blend of the two. And that's kind of where Standard Authority was born and
Mm.
how the dopamine dealer was born. Because I realized I had to take that human element of being able to connect with other human beings and that marketing and digital background that I had and be able to change the way we connect online, right? Remind people that there's not this another there it's not B2B or B2C, right? Business to business or business consumer. Everything is H to H, human to human, because every company is run by another human being. Most marketers forget that. Once I found that, I found my purpose and I found the opportunities to really truly change and humanize the way we are online right now.
You two, us two are going to go on so well. You're completely congruent to how I think about people and connection with people, because some people just lose that, and it's all selfless about them, but it's really about the other person, how you can connect to that other human.
Yeah.
I know what it's like going to networking events and speaking to people. Just ask them questions about themselves rather than me, or there you go, there's slap my business card in your hand. And if you do the virtual social media stuff, this is about me, nothing about you. You're not asking any sort of questions about them to find out about them. Or you do your
Oh
due
yeah.
diligence and connect with them at a deeper level.
Well, Jason, the funny thing, I love how you say that because I mean, a lot of people forget about the business card, but I mean, that was a reference point. Like, if someone was willing to, before they even knew you and built that relate, had that conversation to build that relationship and open up an opportunity, and were willing to give you a business card right out the gate,
Yeah.
that means they're willing to waste money and time, right? And I mean, that's that one resource we don't get back is time. So, like, they're willing to be able to throw money away. Like, here's a business cards don't cost that much, but enough. And I
Yeah.
mean, they're just throwing them out there before they know there's opportunity or even build a relationship. And that's the even in social media today, people go from connection to pitch. And
Yeah.
they forget the fact, even in human in real situations, when two people meet, you've got to have a conversation that
Yeah.
creates a relationship. Relationships open up opportunities, and they skip past that. And that's the biggest thing that I continue to talk about today. And what you're saying as well is we've got to remember that relationship building up in that, because for me, I want advocates over opportunities every single time, because an advocate can bring me 100 opportunities. If I'm just searching for opportunities, that's such a one-to-one relationship, and you're making it about you, not them. If you make an advocate, man, advocates are powerful, and that's where the real human relationships thrive, not only in person but online as well.
Yeah. So tell me how you do this now, because I'm curious about that, because you've created a really good personal brand. And I
Yeah,
like that. And now, by the sounds of it, you do a lot of that to other companies. But what are the core elements that you do, and
yeah.
how you utilize this?
Of course. Well, I mean, it kind of goes through, right? Like, I was very blessed last year. My wife, a little bit more than a year ago, left the corporate world. She used to work at Microsoft, running branding over at the Microsoft Partner Networks, then ran branding over at the digital markets for Gartner, massive companies, right? And then she kind of bet on me, right? Like, okay, I'm going to go all in with the company. And for us, we were already kind of going through doing a connection, but that's that whole thing. Your personal brand is so powerful. When we talk about personal branding, people go in and go, well, that's great. That's about that person. But in reality, as human beings, we connect with other human beings. We look
Mhm.
for commonalities with other things. We don't really connect with brands as much anymore, especially when you talk at, let's say, like car brands, right? Like if you were talking about Mercedes, Porsche, or Tesla, right? What name comes to mind when you say those three companies, unless you're a car person, right?
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Those other 2 companies, they've been around for decades longer, but most people don't know who they are, who runs those companies. So again, that's how fast, because Tesla was able to do that, you leveraging a personal brand. So for us, we started going in there. How do we actually educate, inspire, and draw someone in? Well, that's being able to show up first, right? What are the pillars? What do you stand for? How are you educating, inspiring your audience, not selling them? And then that's just creating content. How you show up
Yeah.
is one of the biggest things. I think, Jason, my wife tells me this all the time. It's not just how the world sees you, it's how you see yourself. It's the combination of two that makes a true personal brand,
Mm.
right? Being able to see those things, that's where it starts. And then once you start creating that content, how do you engage with people, right? Because the biggest thing is the things that we started doing, Jason, is really just the things that my mom taught me how to treat other human beings. We just started doing it online.
Yep.
And if we really pull everything back, Jason, why do you think that every single person in this world, no matter who you are, where you live, what your background is, what has conditioned us over the last year? Why do we post online?
Yeah.
Any
Um,
guesses? Any thoughts? Why do we all post online first and foremost?
how would I guess that? Why do we post online? To show up, to for me anyway. I might see it slightly differently, but I want to give value.
Yeah.
That's what I want to give. But
Well,
I know from other people, it's all about me, all about me. This is how fantastic I am, which is the wrong approach, the way I look at it.
it is. It is. But I mean, like, we all say those things, but the real reason, what we've been conditioned over the last 20 years, and if you've ever watched that movie, it came in a couple years ago, The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
I missed it.
And it's all about conditioning. Remember, one of my first clients is MySpace. So I've seen this go on for a long time, but we've conditioned, first and foremost, above all else, to be able to look for those little hits of dopamine we all get when someone likes or comments on our
Yeah,
post.
I
Then
get.
it's attention, then it's
Yeah.
giving, then it's everything else, because you want that validation. We've been conditioned for that. And so we have to remember that. So we want to get someone's attention. We have to become that dopamine dealer,
Yeah.
right? We have to like and comment on someone's post, and then we have to continue those dopamine hits. Remember, I told you
Mm,
it's about the things that my mom taught me. Well, my mom always taught me to start with appreciation, right? So if I want to get your attention, like on a platform, like our power platform's LinkedIn. So if I want to get your attention on LinkedIn, Jason, the average person gets less than 1% engagement on their post. So what I want to do is start with appreciation. I'm going to look and see if you posted. I'm going to like and comment on your post. I'm going to reach out and say, hey, Jason, man, I saw your recent post. I just want to reach out and say thank you. Too often we don't appreciate that. And I'd appreciate the time, energy, effort, whatever it is.
mhm.
That
Yeah,
little stopgap in someone's pattern, because our pattern is like, comment, share, post, like,
yeah,
comment, share,
yeah,
post.
yeah.
when you appreciate someone for the time they took to be able to do something, rather than going, "Hey, Jason, I see you're wearing a shirt. Me too. Let's connect." Right? That's the usual LinkedIn, and then you get a pitch. That level of appreciation creates a stopgap in someone's pattern, and allows them to be able to hear us and start a conversation.
So how did you accelerate from next to nothing and to have about 75,000 followers or something like that? Is it from what you just described, or did you do
100%.
something that no one else knows about?
It's the things that I do. And I mean, I share these things openly because I mean, I want everyone, we rise up together, Jason. So, I mean, like for me, I do the things. I'm not ever going to put on one of our clients what I haven't done for myself. Right.
Exactly.
And it's that relationship building. So it's not just the outreach, right? That's the active of drawing someone in, your ideal audience, like using Sales Navigator, right? To identify your audience. And that's where most people use this as a pitch machine to be able to really spam 1,000 people and hoping to get the one sale when in essence they just piss off 999 people, right?
I had
But
that yesterday, funny enough. No, or this morning, someone said, "Would you like to go to this sales exhibition? We have the best blah blah blah," and it was just so random and it was so spammy.
yeah,
And it was going, you haven't even checked my profile out. You don't
no,
even
they
know
don't.
who I am.
No, they don't. They don't. And they don't go through those things. And so that's why you've got to look for trigger points because we all hate cold calls and cold email.
Yeah,
So, like trigger points for us, one, ideal audience is posting online. We can start with appreciation there. The other side of it is the people coming to you. Engage with people that engage with you. Cool thing on LinkedIn, not only can I see on every platform who engages on our content, but on LinkedIn specifically, I can see who looks at my profile.
yep.
So all these things are opportunities to start with appreciation. Hey, Jason, I noticed you checked out my profile. I just want to reach out and take 2 seconds, say thank you, man. I really appreciate you checking me out. By the way, what pushed you to check me out? I'd love to be able to understand, what was going on, right? To be able to start that conversation. Hey, Jason, I noticed you like my recent post. Just want to reach out and say thank you. So that's where we started doing it, right? And it doesn't stop there because we're like, okay, cool. They connect. And then this is where everyone pitches. I took it a step further, Jason, because I really wanted to kind of really sink into those things that we learn as children that we forget as adults, right? Like in today's world, when you meet someone new, how many times you walked up to someone and like, "Oh my god, I love your shirt, cool
Yeah.
artwork, cool, love your dog, great car, whatever it is." We just give a nice compliment, right? You've
Oh,
seen
absolutely. I do that actually.
Yeah, yeah. Good people. Like in my house, we always say to my kids, our number one rule in our house is it's nice to be nice, right? And so when you're doing these things on LinkedIn, we looked at it and go, how do we connect? So someone's done one of our trigger points. They've taken an action, profile visit, engaged in our content, or posted great content. Then they connect, right? Once they
Mhm.
connect, this is most people pitch. We go through, we see that they connected. I give a compliment. A compliment on LinkedIn is giving an endorsement,
Yep.
right? Endorsing for podcasting, for sales, whatever it is. And people go, how can you do that? You don't know that person. It's nice to be nice, right? And
Yeah.
this is kind of what I tell my kids.
I suppose it's like, oh, well, probably in Ireland anyway, but if you're sitting in a bar or pub, you just turn over and go, "Hey, how are you doing?" You have a
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah,
and you don't know the person. You're sitting there having a pint or coffee or whatever. You
yeah,
just turn around and go, "Hey, how you doing?" That's really cool. And you start a conversation about nothing or whatever the weather, but then it can build into something slightly different. You find out exactly what they do in
Jason, you're telling me you don't go and pitch first about what you can help them with? I mean, like, come on, you're at the bar, like,
yeah, no,
hey,
I
Jason, you ever thought about using LinkedIn?
straight
Okay, listen.
away, go straight in there and like talk at them, and
Yeah,
walk away and go, "That's a great conversation I had," but the other person didn't.
yeah, yeah. And that's the whole piece, right? That's everyone's, you said it perfectly. We're always talking at people. And it's rare that, especially in direct messaging, that we're actually writing conversationally, the way
Yeah,
you and I are having a conversation. And so that's the kind of piece, right? It's once we get that endorsement, LinkedIn does our work for us. It says, hey, Jason, Josh endorsed you for podcasting. Do you want to say thank you? You hit the button, you say thank you. Now it's you starting the conversation, and now I can ask a question about you, what's going on, you know, ask mindset, whatever it is, and then provide value. By doing these things on a regular basis, it's amazing how you get they're little hits of dopamine that continue that conversation, building that relationship, creating an opportunity
and
of
that's good
being
for me
massive
in a good
advocates.
way,
Yeah.
as opposed to I got a new like, I got a new comment, blah blah blah, whatever it might be, which is a little bit
Yeah.
bullshit, really. So I like
No,
the
we can all buy likes and comments these days. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, that's the problem in today's world with social media. You don't know what's real and what's fake, but having real conversations with real people, that's real opportunity.
yeah. And I like the way you've humanized what you've done and you actually stand for that. And I can see that with you after chatting with you. You are straight talking human,
Yeah.
but you like that element of human connection behind that. So when you're having a look at that and the strategies or whatever, when you're helping clients
Yeah.
to achieve their goals and what do you do to make it human for them? How do you actually build that up to make it sort of real?
Well, you've got to start, right? I mean, like we talk about being authentic, but the most people authenticity is overplayed a lot. You know, we hear
Yeah.
people like going on stories, but I mean, we really do. When we sit down, I mean, we can't because we come in and become a person, right? We can't be them without them. So we sit down, understand where their stories from their childhood, being able to grow up, understanding their values, what they want to be able to educate people on, right? Where can they actually come from a trace place of true authenticity?
Mm.
Because I don't know you, Jason. I've had so many people that come to me when I was doing advertising in the past, like, "Hey, Josh, can you help me get leads for people that are doing $100,000 a month? And I've got a program that I sell for 10 grand that'll triple their revenue on a monthly basis." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, we can find those people." Well, cool. Well, what's $10,000? It'll a $10,000 retainer to be able to build the ads and stuff like that. Well, I don't have any money now, but I can pay you after the sale. I'm like, so wait a minute. You can help someone making $100,000 a month triple their money, but you don't have $10,000. How can you help someone that's making more than you? And it just these things don't
Yeah,
make sense, right? So like I always speak, if you've made a million, you can show someone how you've done that to possibly help them. If you've made 100,000, you can be able to do that. But don't come in and say, "Hey, I'm going to teach you how to be a billionaire," if you've never been a billionaire, right? I mean, and this is the problem that we see from people all the time. They're like trying to be able to be something they're not, rather than just talking from true experience. And
yeah,
once you can actually get that, that's where that human side comes up. Own the things that are good and bad because they all make us who we are.
yeah. I completely concur with what you're saying there to the T, and I've seen it as well. I get approached. I'm sure you get approached all the time with people saying, "I I can coach you to be." Oh yeah, and you look at their profile. You're not coach, are you? Well, have you done anything, coach? Have you coached anyone yet? No, but I can get you loads of clients and go. Well, how can you do that? Because I don't know where you can do that. I just don't understand. I just delete everything. I've only ever spoken to one person, and they're actually quite authentic. I really liked what
Yeah.
they did, and they had the experience behind it. But normally, it doesn't work that well.
I see people all the time. They'll take one of the new LinkedIn courses out there, and they're like, "Hey, Joshua, have you ever thought about using LinkedIn to get leads?" And it's like, "I can get you 1,000 leads." I'm like, one, you didn't look at my profile, which we
Yeah,
talked about
yeah,
before,
yeah,
and two, you look at their profile, they might have been selling pizza before, and you're like, "Wait a minute, like all of a sudden you're a LinkedIn expert now because you took a course?"
yeah,
Come on. I mean, like there is an educational purpose, there's a way to be able to get things, but like lead into it, like lead by example, right? And then don't be able to go in and talk about things that you can do if you've never done them before. And I think this is where people miss out on because they're always trying to be able to go, "Hey, look at this shiny object."
yeah,
When as human beings, we might be motivated and aspire for that shiny object, but we're actually take action on things that are different, right? That'll actually move us farther faster. And I mean,
mm,
that's the big thing, like we're relatable, right? If we're going through, because when people don't relate, like if I go in and say, "Hey, I'm a dad of two," being able to go through like, "Oh, Josh is a dad. Me too." I bet we relate. And I bet when we talk about things, we can actually then have a farther conversation because that's what we look for as human beings. We find ourselves in social groups of people that are similar like us.
yep,
And that's the biggest thing is people forget to be able to put themselves out there as a real person. They try and put themselves out there based on their perception of other people's perception of them. And they have no clue what other people perceive. They're perceiving that. And this is what drives most of us crazy. And this
yeah.
is why social media is so bad. And so, because people are trying to pretend to be something they're not and forgetting who the real person is. And that's who we really relate to.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of core elements of being a little bit vulnerable at times. because then you can show your true self.
Right.
And some people are scared about that. Men, particularly, are more scared of that than women. Women can show their emotional side better
Yeah.
than a man, and a man doesn't do that because they've got the ego, they've got the strength, and blah blah blah, blah all that other bullshit that everyone
Yeah.
speaks about. But I think it's good to show that true connection, and people by people, as we know. People relate to people and they connect to people, and they're like similarity, as you say. There's something in the frontal lobe, which is the mirror neurons. Apparently, that's an imaginary thing that actually happens in there, and you just have that connection, that instant. Yeah, I'm going to get on with that person. They're going to be great. So the question I always like to ask people is, if you were interviewing you holistically, sitting side by side to you, what sort of questions would you ask yourself now, Joshua?
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, I love that. I mean, it's, when we talk about that and look at some of the different aspects, because people go in when they see my history, my past, what I've done, and some of the biggest, one of the biggest questions I would probably ask myself is, what were some of your biggest learning experiences, right? Because I've talked about failure, I've talked about success,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, are they equal? Are they different? I mean, because like for me, when you kind of look at it, like one of my biggest learning experiences was in relationships, right? I was an only child growing up, being able to go through, and I didn't realize till longer that I really needed to understand to be able to have value and trust in other human beings and to be able to actually build that relationship and bond.
Mm,
And that really was a shift for me in business because, again, I thought I was doing, like you said earlier, people always go in and they build their business, they do sales based on themselves. I thought I was doing it for other people when hindsight being 2020, all the things that I was doing, even though I thought I was giving back, doing right in the beginning of my career, it was only for my own ego.
yep.
Not
Yep.
until I released that. And I released that same thing that I told you what everyone was doing, the perception that I had, people's perception of me, that's what was driving me crazy. And once I released that, I said, you know what? The biggest lesson I ever learned was, as human beings, we make decisions emotionally. We
Yep.
make the decisions based on some degree of love or hate. We do not make decisions being indifferent to anything. So if we're putting out content, we're trying to putting ourselves out and we're trying not to be polarizing and trying to be right down the middle, not to offend or provoke or excite anyone. We're just wasting not only our own time, but we're wasting the times of our readers and everything like that. So we have to understand that. So
Mm,
when you release the fact that people are going to hate you, and that's okay, and people are going to love you, but that means that you're being your truest honest self. That's when you're going to really stand out and really truly authentically build a tribe of, I don't know, advocates, right? That'll be by you and understand that you're there to be able to not only help them, but help yourself in the return.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, it's the is it the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. That if you can connect to that, I think people will just be. Uh, I was going to say putty in your hands then, but I don't think that I want to change that.
We don't want to manipulate and stuff
No,
like
we
that.
don't want
Yeah.
to manipulate anyone by doing that. No, that's not the. That's not. We want to help people.
Yeah.
I would say serve people in the best way that we can, and just connect with them. Because something I always like to say: people buy people and brands they like and trust, but they also can connect with. And I think the trust and connection is incredible. Obviously, the credibility and everything else that around that. But when you're actually speaking to a person through a social media platform, it is that connection that you need to get. Maybe it is that dopamine hit. Hopefully, we can get to that serotonin hit, as we spoke
Exactly.
about before, where they feel euphoric when they're around you, and then there's some energy from you, which
Well,
I
dopamine creates the relationship. Serotonin is the outcome of that relationship if you've had a positive experience, right?
that's it. That's what I'm aiming for. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I always like to give golden nuggets forward, and always because it's always about the audience. That's why I love doing this podcast. Number one, I learn so much from people like yourself. Number two, it's the audience get something from these conversations that we have. And what sort of golden nugget could you leave us with?
You know, one of the biggest pieces, 'cause I've said a lot of my golden nuggets, right? Being able to kind of go through there, if people make decisions,
Yeah.
based on some degree of love or hate, being able to go through and talk about, the perception of other people's perception, right? And being able to drive that crazy. So the golden nugget for today that I would really want everyone to understand is you can't forget the you and human, right? And this is the biggest thing that you have to understand as we continue to be able to go through. People go through and try to be human online, but they leave out the you, the you that makes you you special, you unique. And if you don't allow that to be able to continue to be able to shine in and allow those what you might see as flaws in your character or what you might be is what really makes you stand out. And truly, I tried to change this world, Jason, on my own, and it nearly killed me,
Yeah.
right? The only way we can truly change this world is together. So share your information, educate your audience, inspire them. They can't be you without you. So even if you share everything that you have exactly how you do it, they can only get so far, but it will help us and that'll allow us to rise up and we can rise up together. And if they really want to get there faster, they'll hire you because they're missing that special uniqueness of you.
This is what I call it, and I discovered it this year: create the ripple effect.
Love it.
And if you can do that wherever you are in the world, if you can create that positive ripple effect, I think we've done our job. And it also makes us feel good because we've done some value to the world, educated someone, made someone learn something, made someone do something slightly different to where they were. I think even doing this, that's why I love doing this, because I get so passionate about people
Yeah.
because as a rule, I love people. Um, Obviously, you can't please all people all the time. If you're gonna,
You can't do that. No.
it's absolutely impossible. So, but as long as we can do our thing, I think we've done our job well done.
That's it. And I mean, like we've got to be able to do that. I mean, I've got kids, Jason, like I mentioned before, and I can't, you can't, we can't all change this world on our own. So I mean, to make this world a better place for our children and our children's children, we've got to continue to be able to offer these positive impacts because the way the world's going right now, it continues to be able to see that we're so many people are on their own trying to be able to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And we have one of the greatest moments in history, and it seems as a negative, right? We all went through an experience together as a entire world going through COVID that unites us. We talk about commonality. We now on this planet have a commonality that we share with every single other person on this planet. That should bond us and allow us to be able to understand that we're all human and we're here to be able to change the world together.
God, I'm speechless there. I almost had a clear mic. That's really, really powerful. Just one last question
Yeah.
before, for the audio listeners that can't see this. Joshua has two fantastic pictures behind him. I'm just curious about them.
All right. I'm gonna give you the background on those pictures, right? So this is really important to me. And this was a journey I took about 10 years ago that I came back from and had this realization that we can't have true worth without both sides of the coin. And for me, this is the female, the feminine, and the masculine sides of the coin, right? And to truly change this world, we've got to have both sides of that. So I always try to sit in between, understanding both sides of the coin in every conversation, every thought process that I have. So as you can kind of see, this side a little bit more feminine. It's hard to be able to see some of the words a little bit more masculine as it kind of goes through. So that's kind of what the pictures represent. Me always being in the middle and having both sides of that coin add true value to this world.
Wow, that's a phenomenal way to finish the podcast. I love that, and thank you so much. How can people find out a lot more about you?
Well, Jason, of course, they can go to standoutauthority.com, but really, I love when people actually come find me, look up Joshua Bailey on LinkedIn. And then if you're a fan, an advocate, a super fan of Jason's, like when you send me a message on LinkedIn, tell me why you listen to Jason and why you connect with him, right? Because not only does it give me better insight into who you are and what you love about Jason, but it also allows me to be able to connect with Jason better and be able to actually have an understanding who he is. So I love when I get those personal messages that tell me about the podcast host that I'm on right now.
Thank you so much. Again, you've been listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host. Every week I speak to some incredible people from around the world. This week has been excellent. I loved it. Every moment has been really good, really insightful, very thought provoking. And I think the audience are going to love this when they listen to it and come back for more, get those hits coming in again and again and again. Thank you so much, Joshua. You've been incredible.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.